Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere warm, too warm. You're standing beneath a soft golden sky, the kind that usually feels like comfort. The sun's light slipping across your skin, shadows stretching slow and safe. The air hums with that lazy summer warmth that makes you close your eyes and sigh. But tonight, that warmth is hiding something. Because that same light, the one that grew your forests, powered your heartbeats, painted every morning you've ever known, is already planning your extinction. The sun isn't a friend, it's a patient executioner, and you probably won't survive what it has in store. Before you sink too deep into the pillow, hit like and subscribe, but only if you're brave enough to find out how this story ends. Now turn the lights low and let's wander into the dark together. You tilt your face upward. The sun doesn't look like a killer. It looks like everything you've ever trusted. You can almost hear it crackle, feel the faint hum of radiation that's been crossing empty space for 8 minutes just to reach you. 8 minutes of light, 8 minutes of love, and 8 minutes of warning. Every second, the sun hurls out a storm of energy so vast it could melt a mountain in an instant, yet you barely notice. Your skin warms, the plants breathe, the oceans shimmer. But inside that serene fireball, fusion rages. Hydrogen atoms smashing into each other so violently they transform into helium and release light. It's beautiful, it's unstoppable, and it's slowly killing you. You probably think of the sun as stable, reliable, the one cosmic constant that doesn't throw tantrums. But that's the biggest lie in the solar system. It's not calm, it's balanced, barely, like a bomb that's figured out how to explode politely for billions of years. For now, the pressure from its fusion pushes outward perfectly against gravity's pull inward. It's an ancient tug-of-war frozen in equilibrium. But that balance won't last. And when it breaks, everything you've ever known, oceans, mountains, even time, will burn. You can almost feel that future heat against your skin already. A historian once said, "Civilizations are built on the illusion of permanence." The same applies to stars. The sun just hides its decay well. It's middle-aged now, about 4.6 billion years old, and like any aging thing, it's changing, subtly, quietly. It's growing brighter, roughly 10% every billion years. A slow boil, invisible to you. And yet, the signs are there if you look close. Ice ages are growing shorter. The air is getting just a little heavier. Scientists debate how much of that is natural and how much is us. But deep down, even they know the truth. The sun itself is shifting beneath its calm surface. You watch sunlight glint off the ocean, thinking of all the stories built beneath it. Human stories, tiny against the cosmic clock. Empires rise and fall in the time it takes a single solar granule to blink. And still, we call the sun eternal. Maybe it's denial, or maybe we just can't stand the idea that the very thing that gave us life has an expiration date. Fringe theorists whisper about cycles, ancient texts claiming the sun breathes every few millennia, that solar catastrophes wiped out civilizations before ours. Mainstream scientists roll their eyes, but you can't help but wonder, what if they're both right? What if the sun's stability is the real illusion? You think about those old myths, the Egyptian Ra sailing across the sky each day, only to die at dusk and be reborn at dawn. The Aztecs feeding the sun with blood so it wouldn't die. Humanity has always feared one thing above all others: the day the sun stops rising. The irony is that it never stops. It just gets too bright for anyone to notice it's dying. You might laugh softly at the absurdity of it. You, a fragile little creature, trying to comprehend a sphere of plasma 1.4 million kilometers wide. You can fit 1 million Earths inside it, and still it behaves like a ticking clock. Every pulse, every flare, a reminder that even gods have lifespans. And it's not malicious. The sun doesn't hate you. It doesn't even know you exist. That's what makes it worse. The end won't come from vengeance or anger. It'll come from indifference. You shift your gaze downward. The light looks the same as it always did, but now it feels heavier. There's a loneliness in it, a secret. You imagine what this warmth will feel like 1 billion years from now, when the seas begin to hiss and steam, when clouds vanish into memory, when the last blades of grass curl into ash under the merciless sky. And then you wonder, how do you tell the story of something that burns you while it loves you? You'll try tonight. Because this isn't just the story of the sun's death. It's the story of our death, written in light. And before it's done, you'll see the truth, that every sunrise is both a beginning and a countdown. You wake up beneath the same golden sky, only now you know better. You can't quite look at it the same way. The sun is smiling, sure, but you can feel the exhaustion behind that grin. Every ray of light is older than it looks, born from chaos, traveling across space just to pretend it's gentle. The sun wasn't always like this. Once it was chaos itself. About 4.6 billion years ago, a giant molecular cloud made of dust, hydrogen, helium, and the debris of dead stars collapsed under its own gravity. You can imagine it, a dark cradle swirling in silence, then collapsing inward, tighter, hotter, until the universe set it on fire. And that's how your star was born, not in peace, but in violence. If you were there to watch it, you'd have seen a storm of light, a newborn inferno screaming into existence. The sun began its life spinning, pulling debris around it, carving order from the void. Out of that chaos came everything you know, the planets, the moons, even you. It's funny to think that your world was literally built from the leftovers of explosions. Every atom in your body is hand-me-down stardust, passed through generations of dying suns. Even your bones have a memory of that first ignition. There's something poetic about that. You were born from death, and someday you'll return to it. Historians still argue whether early humans had any sense of this cosmic heritage, whether the first person to look at the sunrise felt awe or fear. Some say the ancients already knew. They didn't need telescopes to sense the truth. The sun felt divine because it was, and like all gods, it demanded worship. But there's a fringe theory that makes scientists smirk and storytellers grin. It says the ancients did understand that the sun was alive. Alive in the sense that it breathed, pulsed, aged. They saw solar flares and called them tempests of divine wrath. They watched eclipses and saw the sun die, only to rise again. Maybe they weren't wrong. They just used better metaphors. And that's the thing. Every story about the sun has always been a mirror. You see yourself in it. The sun's youth, its fire, its hunger, those are your qualities too. Its inevitable decay, also yours. When it was young, it burned hotter, spun faster. It consumed hydrogen like a child devouring candy. Its flares violent and unpredictable. The early Earth suffered for it. Boiled oceans, molten skies, radiation storms that stripped away early atmospheres. And yet, somehow, life waited it out. You think of that, how fragile life is, and how stubborn. Tiny cells clinging to rock, enduring heat, acid, and chaos until the sun finally stabilized. It's as if the universe was testing Earth's patience before giving it permission to bloom. That stability, the calm middle age of the sun, is what allowed everything that followed. Bacteria, forests, oceans, you. But that balance came with a hidden cost, like a deal struck in silence. Every second the sun shines, it loses mass, slowly, invisibly. 4 million tons of itself every second radiated into space. And you can almost feel it when you close your eyes. The faint pressure on your skin. That's the weight of the sun's sacrifice. Its body dissolving so that you can breathe. You smile a little. It's darkly romantic, isn't it? The ultimate long-distance relationship. The sun gives everything, and you take it all, never noticing it's dying. There's a line from a forgotten poet. The sun does not rise. It escapes its own gravity, just for us. You think about that for a moment, because one day it won't. Fringe astronomers still argue about whether our sun's formation was triggered by a nearby supernova, a neighboring star that went out with such force that it ignited our own. If true, that means your star was born from death twice over. First from the dust of others, then from the shockwave of one final scream. It's a cycle that feels cruel until you realize it's the only way the universe knows how to create. Destruction is just construction in disguise. And somewhere in that chaos, Earth began to take shape. A small rock wrapped in molten air, orbiting a young star still learning to breathe evenly. The sun's magnetic fields twisted like serpents, flinging flares that would have cooked your world 100 times over. But somehow, it didn't. Maybe luck, maybe inevitability. Historians still argue whether we should thank randomness or destiny for that. But either way, it worked. The sun calmed, its fire softened, and the rhythm of day and night began. You think about that rhythm, the turning earth, the returning dawn, and realize how much of human meaning depends on that repetition. The promise that light will always follow darkness. It's comforting. It's also a lie. Because someday that rhythm stops. But not tonight. Tonight, the light still hums on your skin. The same light that burned when the sun was young. The same warmth that watched the first fish crawl onto land. The first tree split stone. The first person raised their eyes and whispered, "What is that?" And if you listen closely, beneath the calm hum of daylight, you can almost hear it still crackling, like a fire holding back its final blaze. You might not survive it, but for now, it still loves you. You're still drifting in that golden calm, lulled by the illusion of permanence. The sun looks so constant, so serene, you almost believe it could burn forever. But the truth is that it's already dying, so slowly you mistake decay for stability. Every star has a clock. The sun has been ticking since the day it was born, and though you can't hear it, you're living inside its countdown. Right now, it's what astronomers call a main sequence star, the quiet middle chapter of a stellar life, the sweet spot. But every second, its core is converting hydrogen into helium. And that helium doesn't just disappear. It collects, heavy and inert, building up like ash in a cosmic fireplace. The sun burns a little brighter every million years because of it. Its furnace keeps tightening, heating, pushing outward with more force just to keep the reaction stable. It's the stellar version of caffeine, burning hotter to stay awake. You can almost imagine it yawning, stretching its fiery limbs across the void, trying to stay balanced, trying not to collapse or explode. Historians still argue whether ancient civilizations sensed this slow change in light. Some claim Egyptian priests noticed that solar shadows shifted over centuries, that the sun's color deepened imperceptibly through generations. Others say that's myth, projection, but deep down, maybe they did know. Maybe they looked at the same dawn you do and felt that faint wrongness. Because it's subtle, yes, but it's there. The sun is aging, and Earth is already feeling it. Scientists estimate that in about 1 billion years, sunlight will be 10% stronger than it is today. Oceans will begin to evaporate faster than rainfall can replenish them. Clouds will thin. Deserts will bloom where forests once stood. At first, it'll look like global warming gone cosmic, a slow fever. Then it'll turn apocalyptic. You can almost picture it, rivers shrinking, air shimmering, the horizon warping under relentless heat. The last rainstorm in human history will fall not with thunder, but with a hiss. And that's just the beginning. The Earth's delicate thermostat will spiral. Carbon dioxide, the very breath of plants, will drop as rocks and oceans trap it away. Photosynthesis will fail. Trees will vanish. Grass will burn to glass. The last green leaf will curl into dust. And the creatures that remain, if any, will cling to the poles where it's barely survivable. One scientist joked that the final form of life might be shadow bacteria, tiny organisms hiding behind rocks, feeding off minerals and sorrow. You laugh softly, even as the image sits heavy in your chest, because it sounds absurd and inevitable. Fringe researchers argue that Earth's decline might start sooner. That feedback loop, water vapor, methane, runaway greenhouse effects could accelerate everything. Some even say that we're already nudging the switch early, that human-made warming is the faint rehearsal for the sun's final act. You breathe out slowly. That's the kind of thought that makes the stars feel too close. But the irony, this isn't a story about punishment. It's biology meeting physics. A planet simply aging with its parent star. You start to wonder if climate change has always been written into the script, that every world that forms around a sun eventually cooks under the same light that raised it. It's almost comforting in a tragic way. The sun doesn't choose to kill. It's just being itself. Historians still argue whether we should call it death or transformation, because technically, even after the oceans boil away, the Earth won't vanish. It'll just change state. Matter doesn't die. It reconfigures. You remember the joke from some half-sleepy science podcast. The sun isn't dying. It's just entering its existential crisis phase. You smile. Maybe that's all any of us ever do. Burn brighter before fading. A few astrophysicists call this solar senescence, the process of a star gradually aging out of balance. It's slow, quiet, merciless. The sun brightens by fractions of a percent every 100 million years, but that's enough to rewrite the history of life. One day, maybe 1 billion years from now, some descendant of your species, if such a thing still exists, might orbit a little farther out, watching the Earth shimmer like a mirage. Maybe they'll whisper that this was once home. And they'll be right. The sun will still look familiar to them, golden, proud, a god that never learned humility. But inside, it'll be different. The helium ash will be piling high, choking the fusion core, thickening like regret. You might picture it as an old heart, still beating, but strained. And yet, it's strangely comforting. You sit there, listening to that cosmic heartbeat, realizing that everything in the universe shares the same story. Stars live, they shine, they fade. Worlds spin, they burn, they break. Even galaxies themselves one day run out of stars. The universe isn't cruel, it's cyclical. You're part of a system so vast, it doesn't need forgiveness or villains. It just continues. But somewhere deep inside, you feel a pulse of unease. Because if the sun's just halfway through its life, that means the second half is already beginning. The clock isn't waiting, it's ticking. And the next tick will change everything.
You blink, and the years blur. 1 billion sunsets pass. Oceans shimmer and fade, and the earth exhales for the last time. What began as a soft fever now burns like prophecy. The sun is older, heavier, and hungrier, and you can feel it. The air tastes metallic. The horizon wobbles with heat. Even the shadows sweat. This is the day the oceans begin to boil. It doesn't start with a roar. It starts with silence. The kind of silence that comes when life forgets what sound is. The sun's brightness has increased by about 10%, a number that looks small until you remember it's measured in megatons of fury. The once blue sky has deepened to a pale copper, the color of an old coin left too long in someone's hand. Clouds vanish, the atmosphere thins, the seas begin to shimmer, then steam. You can almost hear them, billions of tiny bubbles rising through vast water, the world's slow exhale. Historians still argue whether this moment will take 1 billion years or less. Some models say 900 million, others 1.1 billion. Either way, it's inevitable. The sun's heat will reach a tipping point where evaporation feeds itself, trapping more infrared radiation, raising global temperature until even the poles surrender. It's the runaway greenhouse effect, the same one that turned Venus into a cosmic warning label. Fringe researchers like to play with that comparison. They imagine a distant future when Earth looks almost identical to Venus. An opaque veil of sulfuric clouds, surface temperatures near 900 degrees Fahrenheit, oceans long gone, continents cracked and glowing faintly under the constant glare. They call it Venus syndrome. You might call it the end of everything wet. And if you were there to watch it, somehow shielded from the impossible heat, you'd see oceans shrink into bright salt plains, coral reefs bleaching, then turning to powder, sea life thrashing in vanishing waves, then falling still. It's strange how quietly an ocean can die. For millions of years, water fought gravity and heat and still won. It clung to the planet's surface like memory. But every atom of hydrogen escaping into space is one heartbeat gone. You stand by the ghost of a shoreline. The air presses thick on your chest. A wind moves, but it's not wind, it's steam. You remember the first time you learned that Earth's oceans once came from comets. That ancient ice, delivered by impacts, became the cradle of life. You wonder if the comets knew what they were starting. Historians of climate still argue whether the Earth could delay this fate. If, theoretically, advanced civilizations might shift its orbit outward, or shade it with giant mirrors, or seed the atmosphere with cooling aerosols. Maybe it's possible. Maybe it's hubris. Maybe it's just postponing the inevitable. Because the sun doesn't bargain. Even now, it's growing. Slowly, imperceptibly. Each second, its core contracts slightly, raising its internal temperature. More hydrogen fuses, more helium forms, and the light brightens fraction by fraction. A self-feeding rhythm of doom. You can picture it, the ocean's last stand. Waves turning sluggish, gray. The last drop of rain is sizzling before it hits the ground. Then, nothing. And yet, there's beauty in it. The seas once hid everything. Mystery, monsters, beginnings. Their vanishing lays it all bare. You can see the world's scars now. Mountain roots, ancient craters, drowned canyons. The continents glimmer with mineral crusts like a mirror shattered across space. For the first time since Earth was young, it's naked again. There's a dark joke some astronomers tell, one of those gallows humor lines only tired scientists laugh at. When the oceans boil, at least we'll finally find all the lost ships. You chuckle softly, even though the image feels cruel. The bones of old civilizations revealed in vapor and light. You think about Atlantis, not as myth, but as foreshadowing. Every story of a drowned world is really a prophecy of a dry one. Fringe thinkers argue that some extremophiles might endure, organisms that live in deep rock or chemical vents, feeding off the planet's last breath. It's comforting, in a bleak sort of way, that even after the oceans boil, something might whisper, "We're still here." But for you, there's nowhere left to hide. The sun's light is too close now, too heavy. You can feel your shadow trying to escape you. The air ripples with mirages of what was. And yet, the earth doesn't crack all at once. It endures in stages, peeling like an old painting. The oceans vanish first, then the clouds, then the comfort of blue. The last time you look at the sun, it's blinding white, the color of amnesia. You remember how it once felt, the warmth, the light, the illusion of safety, and realize that all along the sun never promised forever. It only promised now. And now, it seems, is finally running out. So take a breath, if you still can, because the next act of this story isn't about oceans anymore. It's about air. You take one last breath, and it tastes wrong. The air that once filled your lungs with life now feels heavy, sour, thick with betrayal. You exhale, but it doesn't help. The atmosphere, the invisible blanket that once kept you safe, has turned against you. This is the day when the air itself decides to leave. After the oceans vanish, the balance breaks completely. Without water to trap carbon dioxide, the gas begins to accumulate again, mixing with nitrogen and oxygen into a stifling brew. At first, it's just heat, then it's poison. The greenhouse effect doesn't stop when the seas are gone. It intensifies. The atmosphere becomes a trap, an oven, a shimmering veil that locks every stray photon inside. If you could see it from space, Earth would look swollen, shimmering, wrapped in a glowing haze like a feverish pearl. From the surface, the sky would be orange-gray, not with clouds,
but with carbon dust. Historians still argue how long this phase lasts. Some models suggest a few 100 million years of choking equilibrium. Others think it's quick, a few short centuries of agony before the final purge. Either way, it's unlivable. The last traces of oxygen vanish, burned away as rocks react chemically with the air. Carbon dioxide takes over, becoming the dominant gas once again, just as it was billions of years ago, before life began. You can almost imagine the irony. The Earth, after hosting forests and lungs and dreams, returning to its primordial state, the circle closing. The fringe theorists love this part. They claim there could be a moment, a geological heartbeat, when the planet flickers between two extremes, a runaway furnace and a temporary calm. Some say lightning storms might rage across continents, cracking the air with blue fire, painting the horizon with plasma, the last spectacle before silence. But mainstream science has no poetry for this. It's simple chemistry. The hotter the surface gets, the faster molecules move. And one by one, those molecules escape. First water vapor, then hydrogen, then oxygen, then everything lighter than regret. The atmosphere thins until it's no thicker than fog. Then it's gone. You stand there in your mind, imagining it. The weightlessness, the stillness, the windless quiet. No sound travels anymore. You try to inhale, but nothing moves. Your chest rises against nothing. You feel the old panic rise, the kind your ancestors must have felt when drowning. Except this isn't water. This is air, forgetting you exist. Historians of ancient climate studies like to say, Earth remembers how to die. Every extinction, every collapse, every drought, it's all practice. A rehearsal for this final act. And yet, even now, the planet doesn't crumble. It endures. The rocks glow red, but stay whole. Volcanoes sputter one last time, their ash rising and vanishing into vacuum. And through it all, the sun keeps shining, unbothered. If you're looking for villains, you won't find them here. The sun isn't cruel. The air isn't malicious. It's just physics, performing its slow ritual. You can almost laugh at the absurdity of it. All those centuries of humanity worrying about carbon footprints, and here's the universe casually resetting the thermostat to lava. Still, part of you feels for the air. It tried so hard for so long, shielding, balancing, cooling. You think about how it once carried every voice, every laugh, every whisper of I love you. All those sounds dissolved now, unrecorded, unrepeated. Fringe theorists like to imagine that maybe sound leaves a mark, that echoes could still ripple faintly through atmospheric particles like fossils of music. It's nonsense, but you wish it were true. Because silence, real silence, is unbearable. If you could see the Earth now, you'd barely recognize it. The continents gleam dark red and gray. Rivers are scars. Mountains stand sharp and brittle, carved by centuries of wind that no longer exists. There's a strange, still beauty in it. No storms, no waves, no weather. Just a world stripped to its bones, reflecting sunlight like glass. Somewhere in that stillness, a fragment of atmosphere might cling to the deepest crater, swirling faintly like memory. You almost want to breathe it in, to remember what air once felt like. Historians still argue whether this stage marks the true death of Earth, or whether life could somehow persist beneath the surface, shielded in pockets of shadow. But even that's temporary. The sun's heat doesn't stop. It keeps climbing. The air is gone. The seas are gone. But the fire is only beginning. The sun is getting stronger, older, larger, its outer layers trembling with pressure, its brightness turning almost cruel. You can't look directly at it anymore. This is when Earth stops being a home and becomes a fossil. The last whispers of the atmosphere drift outward, glowing faintly in the sun's glare. For a moment, Earth wears a halo, a crown of vapor, a memory of what it once was. And then, nothing. The halo fades, the light steadies. The planet, once blue and alive, now spins naked in silence. And the sun, that patient god, is still not finished.
You'd think the end of air would be the end of everything. But the Earth has one last act left, a death that comes not from impact or invasion, but from exhaustion. Life doesn't explode, it dwindles, it clings. This is The Great Dying, Part 2. The first one happened long ago, long before your species even had names for such things. 250 million years back, volcanic plumes choked the sky, oceans turned acid, and 90% of all living things vanished. Paleontologists still whisper about that event as if it were trauma buried in the planet's bones. But that was a rehearsal. Because this time, the executioner isn't magma or asteroid, it's sunlight. At first, it's slow. Pockets of resistance survive in shadows, in caves, in deep trenches where radiation can't reach. There, the last microbes eat stone and wait for miracles. But no miracle comes. With no rain to recycle nutrients, even those hidden ecosystems dry out. The temperature rises, minerals crystallize, and the ground becomes a kiln. You'd think there would be sound, the crack of dying trees, the hiss of fire. But there's nothing, not without air. Extinction is quiet now. Historians still argue how long this final phase takes. Some say it's mercifully quick, a few thousand years of decline before the surface becomes sterile. Others insist it's prolonged, a slow suffocation lasting millions of years, life phasing like embers that refuse to die. Either way, it's total. The biosphere collapses, the carbon cycle halts. The Earth, once green, turns red with rust as oxygen bonds with rock. And if you could stand there, protected somehow, watching, you'd see the ground shimmer like glass in the relentless heat. The soil would glow faintly, littered with the ghost outlines of roots that once held the world together. You might laugh softly, because this is it. The end of life as we know it. A phrase that's been used so often it's lost its sting. But this time, it's literal. And yet, ironically, it's also beautiful. Because in death, Earth becomes art. Minerals bloom into strange crystalline forests. Sodium and iron fuse under pressure, creating surfaces that sparkle like gemstones. Every mountain becomes a mirror, every valley a bowl of molten light. Fringe theorists like to say that the planet's final days will look like a permanent sunset, that the atmosphere's last refracted gases will tint the world in gold and crimson before vanishing completely. Maybe that's poetic license. Maybe it's prophecy. Either way, the great dying doesn't look like horror. It looks like peace. Still, there's tragedy in knowing that the sun, once life's giver, is the very thing unmaking it. The light that once painted rainbows now etches epitaphs. Somewhere in the dust, a few extremophiles hang on, tiny specks of stubborn chemistry, shielded deep underground, feeding on mineral decay. They're the last laugh of biology, the universe's version of defiance. But even they can't last forever. Eventually, even their molecules unravel. Historians still argue whether that last spark, those final cells, should count as life. When does life stop being life? When it stops breathing? When it stops dividing? Or when there's no one left to call it alive? You think about that. Because if life ends without witness, does it really end? It's a strange comfort, the idea that even as everything burns, there's no audience to mourn it. No grief, just process. In the end, extinction is not a tragedy, it's maintenance. The universe clears the stage so something else can play. You imagine Earth from orbit now, a glowing ember drifting in darkness. Once it was the cradle of civilizations. Now it's just a rock in a furnace. No clouds, no oceans, no air, just light. And somewhere in that shimmering crust, fossilized memories sleep. Footprints, fossils, satellites buried beneath 1,000 generations of ash. A fringe philosopher once joked that maybe that's what gods are, memories that outlast matter. And maybe that's true, because even after the last cell dies, the story remains, etched into orbit, into dust, into starlight. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the echo of it, a whisper of what used to be rain, laughter, breath. And in that silence, a strange peace settles. The earth has done what all things must do, return its borrowed light. The sun, still radiant, still vast, doesn't notice. It just keeps shining, oblivious to the ghosts orbiting it. But it won't be oblivious for long, because the real change is coming, not for Earth, but for the sun itself. The core is trembling. The balance is breaking. You look up, and for the first time, the sun looks different. Not brighter, not kinder, just tired. The fire that once nurtured life is now eating itself. And soon, even the sun will start to fall apart. The core is trembling. The balance is breaking. You look up, and for the first time, the sun looks different. Not brighter, not kinder, just tired. The fire that once nurtured life is now eating itself. And soon, even the sun will start to fall apart.
The earth is silent now, but the sun is not. Its light wavers, not because it's dimming, but because it's unstable. You stare into it and realize that what you've been calling sunlight is really the shudder of something trying to hold itself together. The sun has entered the second half of its life. The calm middle has ended. The countdown has begun. Inside its core, hydrogen, the fuel that's powered it since the dawn of time, is running low. Gravity, that eternal antagonist, begins pressing inward, tightening the core like a fist. The sun fights back with heat. It burns hotter, faster, harder. It wins for now, but at a price. When the helium ash builds up, the pressure inside the sun's center increases dramatically. The outer layers expand, the surface cools slightly, and suddenly the sun's light takes on a red hue. You're watching it swell, ballooning outward, an enormous red blossom unfurling across the sky. The sun that once fit neatly into your horizon now dominates it entirely. You don't see day anymore. You see the inside of an inferno. Historians still argue over when this transformation will begin. The best models say about 5 billion years from now. But the universe doesn't read calendars. It moves at its own pace. To you, the timeline doesn't matter. The change feels immediate. The sun is older, but somehow more alive, breathing, pulsing, groaning in slow motion. You can almost hear the rhythm, like the throb of a giant heart. Fringe theorists once described this phase as the sun's heartbeat, claiming its brightness would fluctuate, creating waves of radiation that sweep through the solar system. Mainstream scientists dismissed it as exaggeration, but you can't help picturing it. The solar wind becoming a pulse, the light itself trembling with exhaustion. It's a strangely intimate thing to realize that even stars get heart palpitations. The Earth, if it's still there, is not thriving. Its surface, once red hot, has cooled into brittle glass. Cracks spider across continents. The atmosphere is gone, the air lost to space. But molten minerals occasionally bubble from beneath the crust, brief glowing reminders of the life that once danced above them. From afar, the planet looks peaceful, but up close, it's a corpse still steaming. You think about Mercury and Venus, those two unlucky siblings closer to the fire. Mercury's gone completely now, consumed by the sun's first swell. Venus is half melted, half vapor, its mountains dissolving into plasma. The sun has claimed its first 2 children. And the question gnaws at you, will it claim Earth too? The sun's expansion slows briefly, as if catching its breath. Its outer atmosphere flickers, tossing loops of plasma hundreds of thousands of miles high. Those loops, solar prominences, once looked delicate from a distance. Now they're enormous, fiery tendrils stretching across the void like grasping hands. The sun is no longer the golden god of your ancestors. It's a red giant, and it's hungry. Historians still argue whether the sun's outer layers will reach all the way to Earth's orbit or stop just short. But either way, the outcome is the same. Earth is doomed, not by collision, but by proximity. Even if the planet isn't swallowed, it'll be scorched beyond recognition. You imagine standing in that world's final twilight. The sun fills half the sky. Shadows are crimson. The ground glows faintly, as if lit from within. Every rock, every fossil, every forgotten city, melting together in a single endless sunset. You can almost feel it, the vibration in your bones, the warmth creeping into your teeth, the way the horizon itself seems to ripple. It's horrifying, and yet you can't look away, because it's beautiful. The same light that once grew sunflowers now devours mountains. The same warmth that birthed oceans now boils stone. There's poetry in that symmetry. Fringe researchers sometimes describe this phase as the sun repainting the solar system. Every planet will glow differently under its new light. Mars, copper red. Jupiter, striped with molten gold. Saturn's rings, gone. The entire solar system will shimmer like a fading mural. And somewhere, The Earth, your Earth, will reflect that light one last time. A pale blue ghost orbiting too close to its dying star. You can almost hear the echo of oceans that no longer exist, the phantom wind brushing glass dunes, the ghosts of rain falling where no sky remains. For a moment, the sun flares brighter. Its light washes over everything, and in that light, you see not destruction, but completion. Because this was always the deal. The sun gave you warmth, beauty, color, life, and in return, it takes everything back. The scales are balanced. The light softens briefly. You exhale. For the first time, you can look at the sun without fear. It's still immense, still merciless, but now it feels almost human. Tired, lonely, trying to remember why it burns. You smile faintly. Maybe that's how every fire ends, not with rage, but with forgetting. The sun trembles again, the heartbeat slows. And in the silence that follows, you realize something. This isn't the end of the story. It's only the beginning of the sun's death. You're floating now, no longer tethered to the molten husk of Earth, but drifting quietly through space, watching the sun swell into something unrecognizable. It's no longer the crisp golden sphere you grew up with. It's enormous, trembling, and red, its edges blurring into the black like smoke. You can almost hear it breathing, each expansion a sigh, each contraction a heartbeat fading in slow motion. This is when the moon takes its bow. Once it was Earth's faithful companion, circling close enough to pull the tides, to sculpt calendars and myths. But now the tides are gone, and so is the ocean they once ruled. The moon drifts in silence, its orbit stretching wider every year, an old friend slowly walking away. But that's not the end of it, because as the sun expands, gravity itself begins to change. The balance between the Earth, what's left of it, and the moon unravels. The moon might drift free entirely, or worse, be pulled back in for one final collision. Astronomers still argue over which fate is more likely. Some say the moon will escape, becoming an independent wanderer, a rogue satellite glowing faintly in the red twilight. Others think the sun's pull will distort its orbit until it spirals inward, crashing into the Earth in one final reunion, a cosmic embrace that ends in molten ruin. Either way, it's a love story written in gravity and grief. You can imagine it, the moon moving across that swollen red sky, no longer silver but blood-colored, each crater glowing faintly in reflected light. The Earth beneath it glowing too, scarlet and smooth, no seas to mirror its face. It's a vision that feels ancient and apocalyptic, like an ending carved into myth long before it happened. And maybe it was. Historians of myth still argue whether the ancients somehow felt this future. So many civilizations spoke of the sun devouring the moon, of red skies, of final nights when the two celestial lovers would meet again. The Norse called it Ragnarok. The Hindus called it the Kali Yuga. Even in science, you can hear the echo of prophecy. Because the truth doesn't care whether it's told as scripture or as physics, it still ends the same way. There's something eerily peaceful about the moon's slow farewell. It's been drifting away from Earth at about 3.8 centimeters per year ever since it formed. That's the same speed your fingernails grow. A small, almost tender movement, but over billions of years it adds up. By the time the sun swells into its red giant phase, the moon will be tens of thousands of kilometers farther out. The dance between Earth and moon, the one that governed tides, eclipses, even biological rhythms, will end. The nights will grow emptier, the shadows shallower. But here's the strange part. Even as the moon drifts, it still matters. It's still shaping what's left of the Earth's fate. Tidal drag, orbital decay, gravitational feedback, these invisible forces are the strings still connecting two ghosts. Fringe physicists like to play with the idea that the moon might one day disintegrate before it collides, pulled apart by gravity into a ring of debris. They picture it like Saturn's rings, except glowing crimson, circling Earth's corpse in a halo of ash and stone. It's both tragic and beautiful, a crown for a world that's already gone. You smile softly at the thought, because somehow, even in annihilation, the solar system insists on beauty. The sun's light pulses again, scattering through the debris, turning every orbiting fragment into a tiny mirror. For a few thousand years, the solar system will shimmer, a glittering red sea of rock and dust. And then, that too will fade. The moon, whether broken or whole, will no longer cast shadows. The Earth, whether intact or molten, will no longer spin fast enough to define days. The concept of night will disappear entirely. And yet, something inside you feels calm. Because you realize this isn't a tragedy, it's choreography. Every orbit, every fall, every flare, it all follows rules older than memory. Historians still argue whether beauty exists without witnesses. If no one's left to see the red sky, is it still beautiful? You decide it is, because beauty was never for you. It was always for itself. You drift past what used to be home, past the faint outline of the moon, perhaps whole, perhaps shattered. You think about all the stories humanity once told about it. The goddess who wept, the wolf who chased, the lovers who met under its light. And you realize that maybe those stories were never about the moon at all. Maybe they were about endings, the quiet acceptance that even the most loyal companions drift apart eventually. The moon moves on. The Earth spins slower. The sun grows hungrier. And in that widening silence, the solar system becomes a painting, the colors deepening, the details fading. You breathe, or at least you imagine you do, and the thought flickers through your mind. Everything that rises must drift. Everything that shines must burn. Everything that we love must eventually let go. The sun sighs again, louder this time, brighter, and you realize the expansion is accelerating. The red giant isn't finished growing. You float farther now, far enough to see the inner solar system as a graveyard. The once orderly dance of planets has become chaos. Orbits stretch, wobble, decay. What was once the calm clockwork of creation now stutters like an old machine running out of rhythm. Mercury is gone. Venus is a ghost. And now, as you drift through the haze of cosmic heat, you realize you've seen this story before. You just didn't know it. Because Mercury and Venus are not just dead worlds. They're letters from the future, mailed long ago to warn Earth of its fate. Mercury was always doomed. The smallest planet, the closest to the sun, it never had a chance. Its surface was baked and bombarded from the start, its air gone, its rocks scarred. The sun's tidal pull tore at it endlessly until it became tidally locked. One side eternally day, the other night. On the day side, metal melts. On the night side, it freezes. It's a world at war with itself. And yet, Mercury still tells you something important. Proximity kills. Venus's story is even crueler. She was once Earth's twin. Same size, same gravity, maybe even the same oceans once. But something tipped the balance. Scientists still argue what exactly went wrong. Some say Venus was just unlucky, too close to the sun, too thick an atmosphere. Others say it was volcanic madness, a runaway greenhouse that fed on its own reflection. And then there are the fringe theorists, the ones who love the poetry of catastrophe. They say Venus tried to be Earth. They imagine ancient oceans boiling beneath pale skies, lightning flickering across alien rain. Maybe, they whisper, Venus had its own dawn of life and lost it. You can almost see it. A world of silver clouds and turquoise seas, a mirror of home that took one wrong breath. Now its sky is a cauldron. Its surface bakes at 900 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. The pressure there is so heavy it could crush a submarine. And that thick yellow mist? It's acid, sulfuric, endless, and bitter. Venus is what happens when the sun grows impatient. And that's the letter she sent to Earth. You're next. You glance back toward where your planet used to be, and you see it, already halfway to Venus's fate. Its surface glows red, the air long gone, its crust cracking like old parchment. The resemblance is uncanny. Historians still argue whether Venus's transformation was inevitable or preventable. But that's the cruel truth of astronomy. Sometimes the difference between survival and extinction is a few million kilometers. You can't help but smile at the dark irony. Humanity once dreamed of colonizing Venus, building floating cities above her poisonous clouds. The same species that barely survived its own warming once planned to live inside another planet's furnace. That's the kind of optimism only desperation can invent. But now, in this distant future, Venus is simply a mirror held up to Earth's corpse, a warning no one heeded because there was no one left to hear it. Still, as you drift between them, you realize something. The death of planets isn't random, it's a pattern. Each one falls in order. Mercury first, then Venus, then Earth. It's choreography again, a slow cosmic waltz toward oblivion. And the sun is the music. You watch its surface ripple, vast loops of plasma rising and falling like liquid fire. Those are solar prominences, storms so huge they could engulf whole planets. You can almost feel their heat on your skin, even from this impossible distance. Fringe researchers once speculated that these storms could grow so large in the red giant phase that they'd connect the sun to its nearest planets, creating bridges of flame between worlds. They called them flares of farewell. No one proved it, but if you could see them now, you'd believe it. The sun is writing its own obituary in light. You remember that phrase from earlier, the sun doesn't hate you. It's never felt truer. Watching it burn now, you don't see malice. You see inevitability. You see exhaustion. And yet, even as it destroys, it creates something breathtaking. The outer atmosphere, what astronomers call the corona, flares outward, glowing white-hot against the blood-red disk. It's like a halo made of fire. For a moment, the sun looks holy again. You can't help but think of the myths. Ra, Helios, Amaterasu, Surya, the gods who carried the sun across the sky. Maybe humanity was right to deify it, because what else do you call something that creates and destroys with equal grace?
The scientists will tell you the sun is just plasma and fusion. The poets will tell you it's a god in slow collapse. Both are right. You drift past Venus, that pale orange marble lost in a haze of acid, and realize something chilling. Once, Venus's morning star was Earth's first light. Humanity used it to mark beginnings. Now it marks endings. If anyone were still alive to look up, they'd see it not as a beacon, but as a mirror of their own future, a reminder that even paradise has a deadline. Historians still argue whether life could have existed on Venus's surface before the runaway greenhouse. Some say maybe, briefly, perhaps microbial, maybe aquatic. Others scoff. But you like the romantic version, the one where Venus was Eden and the sun was the serpent. Because in the end, that's every planetary story. Creation, temptation, fall. You turn back toward the sun, its red glare pulsing, its voice growing louder. Mercury gone, Venus burning, Earth dying. And now the sun's hunger finally turns inward. The red giant has reached its crescendo, and the next act is about to begin. You brace yourself, because what comes next is not survival, it's consumption. You hover in the void, watching as the sun swells and falters, its once smooth surface now wrinkled with turbulence, its crown flaring like a wounded beast. You can feel the gravity shifting beneath your bones, the pull of something massive but unstable, something fighting its own weight. The sun isn't just expanding anymore, it's shedding. The solar wind, the steady stream of charged particles that's always flowed gently outward, turns violent. Whole layers of the sun's atmosphere begin to tear away, peeling into space like molten silk. And you can almost hear it, a low, cosmic sigh. The sun is getting lighter, losing mass at an impossible rate. For the planet still clinging to its grasp, this is both mercy and chaos. When a star loses weight, gravity loosens its grip. The orbits of surviving worlds start to drift outward, spiraling into safer, colder lanes. Mars slips farther from the furnace. Jupiter and Saturn drift like tired sentinels, guarding what's left of the system's bones. For a fleeting moment, Earth's remains might escape total destruction. The sun's bloated edge licks closer, but with each layer it sheds, its reach shortens. The dance of death becomes a near miss. Historians still argue whether this lucky retreat will actually happen. Some models say Earth will survive as a charred relic. Others predict it'll still be swallowed whole. But either way, the world you once knew is gone. And so is the sun you once recognized. You remember the old myths again, the ones where the sun was a chariot or a torch or a god's burning eye. You think about how primitive those stories seemed. But now, watching it unravel, you realize
Those ancient poets weren't wrong. They just used better metaphors. Because what's happening now is divine in its way. The sun is burning itself to save what's left of its family. It's dying with spectacle. You can almost imagine it apologizing to its children, sorry for the heat, sorry for the silence, sorry for the light that couldn't last. But stars don't apologize, they perform. And the performance is magnificent. Every few thousand years, another layer peels off. Gas and plasma drift outward, glowing faintly as they cool. From afar, it looks like a flower opening in slow motion, a rose made of fire blooming in a vacuum. Fringe astronomers once called this stage the solar chrysalis, because inside all that chaos, the sun is transforming. It's becoming something new. The hydrogen is nearly gone. Helium takes over as the primary fuel, fusing into carbon and oxygen under immense pressure. For a while, the sun burns hotter than ever before. But helium burns fast, and when it's gone, the core collapses again. This cycle repeats, a heartbeat of death throes. Each pulse sends new waves of plasma into space, painting the darkness with color. You watch it unfold like art. The expelled gases stretch and spiral, forming vast shells of glowing light. If anyone were around to see it through a telescope, it would be breathtaking. A planetary nebula, the cosmic equivalent of a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. Historians still argue over why it's called planetary. It has nothing to do with planets, really. The name comes from 18th century astronomers who thought the round shapes looked like distant worlds. But the name stuck, and maybe that's fitting, because these nebulae are what planets leave behind when they die. And this, right here, is the beginning of the Sun's nebula. You can see the first filaments forming, ribbons of blue, green, and violet plasma curling through the black. The light dances slowly, shimmering like oil on water. You think about Earth again. It's gone quiet now, its orbit uncertain. Maybe it still circles the dying sun, tracing wider loops with every pulse of radiation. Maybe it's already vaporized, its elements drifting among the debris. Either way, parts of it, its dust, its metals, its stories, are rising, being woven into the sun's final artwork. And suddenly, you realize something incredible. Nothing is wasted. Every atom the sun releases will become raw material for new worlds, new stars, new chances. Even Earth's ashes will be recycled into someone else's sunrise. You smile faintly, because that's the hidden mercy of destruction. It's never final. The fringe philosophers love this part. They say death isn't an ending, it's redistribution. That the atoms once forming your body, your breath, your planet, might someday be part of another mind wondering about their own sun's fate. You like that thought. It's not hopeful exactly, but it's generous. The sun trembles again, its corona flaring with blinding light. One last pulse, one last heartbeat. The outer layers explode outward, a luminous shell expanding in all directions. For a few thousand years, it will glow across space, a cosmic lantern marking the spot where a star once lived. And at the center of it all, the sun's heart remains. Small, white, incredibly dense. You recognize it. You've heard the term before. A white dwarf. It's the sun's ghost, its final shrunken self. Once it was large enough to light the solar system. Now it's no bigger than Earth, yet holds half the sun's mass. Its light isn't from burning anymore, it's from cooling, a fading ember in infinite darkness. The star that once defined day is now no brighter than a diamond held up to starlight. And the solar system, that old family of wanderers, drifts silently around it, cold, distant, but still orbiting their fallen king. The sun has become its own tombstone. You drift closer to the ghost that was once your sun. It's smaller now, shrunken, dense and white-hot, a pearl suspended in blackness. Its light is steady but thin, like the echo of something that once roared. This is not the sun of mornings and shadows. This is the sun in memory. The surrounding space is quiet, almost reverent. The chaos is gone. The solar wind has slowed to a whisper. What remains of the sun's former self is confined within this brilliant ember. A white dwarf, cooling endlessly, no longer fueled by fusion, only by leftover heat and stubbornness. It's still beautiful. From afar, it looks peaceful, but up close, the truth is staggering. The matter that makes up this white dwarf is degenerate. Atoms crushed so tightly together that the normal rules of physics don't apply. The protons and electrons are forced into uneasy proximity, creating a substance denser than anything you can imagine. A single teaspoon of this star's flesh would weigh several tons. And yet, despite all that weight, it floats, serene, delicate, almost fragile. Historians still argue whether the sun will end as a pure white dwarf, or whether it might briefly flicker through another stage first. Some models suggest a final helium flash, one last violent breath before silence. Others believe it'll fade gradually, like a candle guttering in its own wax. But either way, this is the last light. You can still trace the outlines of the nebula it left behind, the glowing shroud of gases drifting outward like a celestial veil. Over tens of thousands of years, it will expand and fade, dissolving into the galactic background. And in time, even that white dwarf will cool. The scientists call this the black dwarf stage, but there's irony in the term, because none have ever been observed. The universe simply isn't old enough for one to exist yet. It takes trillions of years for a white dwarf to cool completely, to dim into absolute darkness. So, this is uncharted territory. You are witnessing a future beyond imagining. In the meantime, the white dwarf continues its slow fade, radiating ghost light into empty space. Around it, the remnants of the solar system drift. Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, each planet colder than ice, their moons frozen solid. The once glorious ringed world of Saturn is gone, its rings scattered into dust. Jupiter's storms have fallen silent, its great red spot just a stain on a corpse. You can almost feel nostalgia for their chaos. 1 billion years ago, these worlds danced around a blazing sun. Now they orbit a cinder, bound not by light, but by memory. It's hauntingly poetic, like a ballroom after the orchestra has gone home. The dancers still circle, but the music's long stopped. Fringe physicists speculate that in this frozen era, strange things might still occur. With the sun's light gone, gravity becomes the dominant artist. Tiny perturbations caused by passing stars, rogue planets, or dark matter streams could fling some of these cold worlds free into interstellar space. Others might drift inward, crashing into the white dwarf's surface. Each collision would be spectacular. The dormant star would briefly flare, a flash of remembrance, as if startled awake by old company. Then it would fade again, quieter each time. Historians still argue what to call such flashes: zombie flares, dwarf novae, stellar echoes. The names vary, but the meaning is the same. The dead sometimes remember they were once alive. You think about that, about how, even in cosmic death, there are echoes. If you listen closely, you can almost hear them. The faint hum of gravity waves rippling through the dark. The whisper of ancient starlight bouncing between frozen moons. It's strange how silence can still sound like music when you're far enough away. You remember how it all began. Those first stories of the sun, the first fires that humans worshipped, the warmth that made crops grow, the light that guided migrations. Everything humanity ever was began with this light, and now it's ending with it too. You can't help but smile at the symmetry. The sun created you, and in a way, you helped create this moment. Not you personally, but your kind, their curiosity, their equations, their telescopes, their endless need to look up and ask why. It was humans who first realized that stars die. It was humans who saw in distant galaxies the ghosts of suns that had gone before. They knew this would happen. They just never imagined what it would feel like. And here you are, feeling it. The loneliness is palpable. The beauty is unbearable. You drift around the white dwarf, tracing the faint glow of what used to be the solar system. In the dimness, something catches your eye. A faint blue glimmer near the edge of the nebula. It's not a planet, not a moon. It's debris. Metal, maybe silicon, arranged in familiar, unnatural geometry. The ruins of a satellite, perhaps. A relic from when life once looked up. You move closer. The markings are long erased, but the shape remains unmistakable. A shard of a machine built to watch the very thing that killed it. You almost laugh. Humanity left behind one final act of irony, a telescope that outlived its star. Fringe historians call this poetic justice. The universe calls it entropy. You call it memory. Because even as the light fades, the story doesn't. It's imprinted on the particles, woven into the radiation, carried outward in every photon that ever escaped. The sun's life, Earth's life, your life, they all ripple outward forever, becoming part of someone else's sky. And somewhere, someday, in another galaxy, another star will rise, and it will burn with atoms that once belonged to your sun. A rebirth so vast, so indifferent, it almost feels tender. You close your eyes, not that you need to, and imagine it. A new dawn, billions of years away, made from everything this old one left behind.
You drift farther back, giving the scene space to breathe. The white dwarf glows faintly at the center of its nebular shroud, a dying ember surrounded by memory. The solar system is gone, the dance concluded, yet the silence feels alive, almost humming. You're floating through the aftermath, through the ashes of creation. It's strange how endings can glow brighter than beginnings. You watch the gases expand, the planetary nebula stretching into filaments of blue, green, and violet, thin as silk, vast as dreams. It's one of the universe's quiet jokes. A dying star's last breath becomes one of the most beautiful sights in existence. If there were eyes left to see it, they'd call it art. Fringe astronomers used to say that beauty itself might be a survival mechanism of the cosmos, its way of ensuring that even in destruction, something remains worth noticing. You don't know if that's true, but staring at this cosmic bloom, it feels possible. The nebula keeps expanding, light bleeding into vacuum, color unraveling into black. In a few
tens of thousands of years, even this will fade, dissipating into the interstellar medium. The sun's remains will become dust again, raw material for the next cycle of creation. You realize suddenly that everything you've ever known, all the songs, the laughter, the civilizations, the oceans, the clouds, the voices, are now reduced to particles adrift in that haze. Stardust, literally. The universe's favorite cliché, finally true. Historians still argue whether any of it matters. The philosophical ones insist that meaning requires observers, and with humanity gone, there's no one left to assign it. The romantics disagree. They say meaning is inherent in motion, that as long as the dust moves, the story continues. You like the romantics better. Because as you watch the nebula fade, you realize it's not vanishing, it's dispersing. It's going somewhere. The gases travel outward for light years, merging with other clouds, other remnants of dead stars. Eventually, gravity will pull them together again. They'll swirl, compress, ignite, and somewhere in that new furnace, fusion will begin anew. A new star will be born. You can almost see it, the soft blue of newborn hydrogen, the flicker of ignition, the birth of another sunrise. It's not the same sun, it never will be. But it doesn't need to be. The universe isn't sentimental, it's cyclical. Fringe cosmologists like to call this stellar reincarnation. Not literal rebirth, but continuity through transformation. Every atom recycled, every story rewritten. The hydrogen in your blood once burned in a star billions of years ago. The carbon in your bones was forged in a supernova. You've always been cosmic residue, pretending to be conscious. And now the cycle continues without you. The white dwarf keeps cooling. The nebula keeps thinning. Light keeps fleeing into the dark. It should feel tragic, but somehow it doesn't. There's serenity in it. You remember that old human saying, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Turns out it wasn't poetry, it was astrophysics. The Earth's atoms, iron, carbon, silicon, are already drifting into the sun's fading shell. They'll travel for eons, invisible and untraceable, until gravity collects them again. Perhaps they'll join another planet one day. Perhaps another creature will walk under a different star and wonder, briefly, who came before. Historians still argue whether consciousness can ever reappear. Could the same combination of atoms, by sheer chance, reform into another being with memories faintly resembling yours? The odds are astronomical, but so was your existence the first time. Maybe that's enough. You drift closer to the white dwarf again. Its light is weaker now, its color shifting from white to faint blue. The temperature has dropped, but its density remains unthinkable. An entire sun compressed into a planet-sized diamond. Yes, diamond. That's what it's becoming. Carbon under pressure, crystallizing as it cools. The sun, once a raging inferno, will end as a jewel. Astronomers call such objects carbon crystallization cores. Poets, more sensibly, call them diamond stars. The sun is turning into a diamond. You can't help but laugh softly. After all the fire, all the fury, all the destruction, it ends in elegance. The same fusion that once devoured worlds now freezes into perfection. It feels like the universe's version of forgiveness. Fringe philosophers like to say that beauty and horror are siblings, that the universe needs both to make sense. Watching this, you finally understand what they meant. The horror of destruction gave birth to this calm radiance. The silence feels earned. And so, the sun's long story reaches its quiet middle, not its end, not yet. For trillions of years, this diamond heart will linger, shining faintly into an ever-darkening cosmos. You think about the word forever and realize it's meaningless here. Even this diamond won't last forever. Entropy will find it too, but not yet, not for a very, very long time. For now, the light remains, the sun sleeps. And you, whatever you means in a universe this old, float beside it, watching. You whisper into the void, not expecting an answer. We came from you. And maybe, just maybe, the dying star hears you. Because for a moment, the faintest pulse trembles through its light.
The light from the diamond star fades as you drift deeper into the dark. There's no night anymore, just absence. No sunrise waiting, no warmth, no blue scattered across the sky. The universe itself feels like it's holding its breath. And in that stillness, time changes meaning. You've left behind billions, then trillions of years. Galaxies have moved apart like drifting continents. Their light, once brilliant, has stretched into long, cold wavelengths. The stars that once painted the Milky Way have either died or gone silent. The universe has entered its quiet season. Historians, at least the theoretical ones who imagined far beyond their lifetimes, called this the degenerate era, a time when no new stars are born, when all that remains are the corpses of the old, white dwarfs, neutron stars, and black holes. The universe has become a graveyard of embers. But even a graveyard can hum. You can still sense movement, the faint tug of gravity between invisible giants, the whisper of radiation leaking from the edges of collapsed stars. You can almost feel it, the slow, endless rearranging of everything that ever was. It's oddly soothing. The sun, your sun, is now only one of many dim ghosts in this eternal dusk. Its nebula long faded, its light now barely measurable. But it's not gone. It lingers, patient, cooling inch by inch, its energy leaking out in quiet defiance of the void. You float past remnants of other stars, some brighter, some dimmer, some gone entirely. Each one once burned with the same arrogance, the same brilliance, the same promise. Each one believed itself immortal. Now they are diamonds in the dust. Fringe physicists once called this era the universe of ghosts. Not because there are spirits, but because the universe itself behaves like one, thin, transparent, echoing with faint reminders of what it used to be. And yet, in this emptiness, strange things still happen. Black holes, the gluttons of the cosmos, still feed, slowly, invisibly, on stray particles and drifting remnants. Each one is a silent engine consuming matter that strays too close. When they collide, they send ripples through space-time itself, gravity waves that roll endlessly outward, like the universe's heartbeat refusing to stop.
Historians still argue whether those waves count as music. Some call it noise. But you can feel it, the bass pulse of existence, faint but steady. Even in the silence, there's rhythm. It's comforting in a cosmic, melancholy way. You drift for what feels like eternity, passing what's left of the solar system. The planets, if they still exist, are invisible now, frozen lumps of rock and metal tracing faint orbits around a star that no longer shines. The white dwarf, slowly crystallizing, emits no light now, just gravity, invisible but faithful. This is what the ancients feared when they spoke of the end of days. They imagined fire and judgment, not this quiet unmaking. But if they could see this, if they could see how beautiful nothingness can be, they might have slept easier. The universe doesn't end with fire, it ends with grace. Fringe cosmologists used to argue about whether new physics could emerge here in this darkness. Could quantum tunneling reignite dead stars? Could protons decay into something stranger, birthing new light? Maybe, maybe not. The point isn't whether it happens. The point is that it could. Possibility survives even when light does not. That thought makes you smile, because it means that even in the universe's last sigh, something refuses to give up. You look toward the distant cluster that once held the Milky Way. It's faint now, just a smudge of gravitational ghosts. All the familiar landmarks are gone. Orion, Andromeda, the Pleiades. The cosmic map has dissolved. And yet, the physics remains the same. Energy decays, matter drifts, gravity whispers, time flows forward, slowly but relentlessly. You remember what it used to mean, morning, noon, night, years, ages. But here, time isn't measured in hours or centuries. It's measured in temperature. The universe has cooled to just a few degrees above absolute zero. A chill so deep, it's beyond touch, beyond sensation. The last traces of warmth come from the occasional collision of fading remnants. A last flicker of energy, a brief blush against infinity. You float through one such event now. Two dying white dwarfs collide, merging into a single flash. For one glorious moment, it's as if a new star is born. But it's not. It's a death inside a death. A final exhalation before silence returns. Historians still argue whether the universe will truly die or just transform into something we can't yet imagine. Maybe it'll collapse inward again, reversing the Big Bang in a final breath. Maybe it'll stretch forever, cold and thin until even atoms forget they existed. No one knows. But you know this: everything ends, and everything changes. And sometimes those are the same thing. You drift through the faint radiation of that last collision, and for a moment you glow. You can almost pretend the light is your own. And you think, not for the first time, that maybe that's what consciousness was all along, a flicker pretending to flame. The darkness deepens, the stars fade, the heartbeat slows. And somewhere in that silence, something ancient sighs. The universe is tired, but not done. Not yet. You've lost all sense of scale. The stars, the galaxies, the distances, they've blurred into abstraction.
There's no more color, no more heat, no more sound. You float in a silence so complete it feels like pressure, a silence that's been building for quadrillions of years. This is the dark era. All the easy metaphors, death, night, shadow, feel too warm for what this is. There is no contrast here, no difference between light and absence. The universe isn't dark, it's blank. Every star has burned out. Every white dwarf has cooled into invisibility. Every black hole has finished its feast and fallen quiet. Even gravity, that most stubborn of forces, is weakening, spread too thin to pull anything together. The universe has become a poem written in invisible ink. Historians still argue whether this phase will last forever. The numbers they use are incomprehensible. 10, 100 years, maybe more. A timescale so vast that language folds in on itself trying to contain it. And yet, even here, movement persists, tiny, reluctant. You drift past the corpse of what once a galaxy, a faint halo of matter stretched thin by expansion. Each particle is a lone wanderer, traveling at speeds that defy emotion. They never collide, they never decay, they just move, endlessly apart. You wonder if they're lonely. Fringe cosmologists once joked that at the end of time, the universe becomes a retirement home for photons, each one ancient, weary, and far too polite to bump into another. You can almost picture it, light too old to shine, coasting on inertia. But then again, maybe loneliness doesn't apply here. There's no mind left to feel it. Only you, a thought-shaped ghost, lingering where thought no longer belongs. You look for something, anything to anchor to. The sun? Gone, now a black crystal, colder than truth. Earth? Its orbit lost long ago, its atoms scattered among a trillion others. Even the black holes have vanished, evaporated through Hawking radiation, their mass slowly converted into faint whispers of energy. The universe is pure entropy now, a gray fog of subatomic debris evenly distributed. Perfect stillness, maximum sameness. And yet, you can't help feeling awe. Because this utter quiet isn't death. It's the closest thing to balance the cosmos has ever achieved. No conflict, no waste, just equilibrium. You remember that fringe philosopher, the one who said the universe isn't a machine, but a breath. Inhale, creation. Exhale, dissolution. Maybe this is the pause between breaths. Historians still argue whether another inhale will ever come. Some think quantum fluctuations, tiny ripples in nothing, might one day spawn new matter, new energy, a new Big Bang. Others say this is it, that the story is finished, the curtain drawn. But the universe has a history of surprises. After all, the last Big Bang came out of nowhere. A fluctuation, a spark, an improbable moment of imbalance. There's no reason it couldn't happen again. No reason this silence couldn't end with another word. You close your eyes, and for the first time in eternity, you imagine it. A point of light forming in the void. Small, unremarkable, trembling. It expands, slowly at first, then faster. Heat floods back, energy, pressure. The blackness begins to tear. You know it's just imagination, your own need for rhythm imposing itself on infinity. But it feels real. You can almost feel warmth again, smell ozone, hear the first hum of hydrogen coming into being. A new universe igniting in the ashes of the old. And in that newborn light, maybe something like you will appear again. Not you exactly, but something built from your atoms, carrying your echoes. Another mind that will one day look up at its sun and wonder what came before. Fringe physicists call this the Phoenix hypothesis, the idea that reality itself is cyclical, that every universe rises from the ashes of its predecessor, carrying faint imprints of what was. They say if you look closely enough at the cosmic background, you can almost see fingerprints from before time began. Maybe that's what déjà vu really is. The universe remembering its last draft. You laugh softly to yourself, a soundless cosmic chuckle. It's absurd, but it's comforting. Because if that theory is true, then nothing is ever truly lost. The sun you knew might be gone, but its light might yet burn again in another sky. The atoms that once formed your breath might be part of a nebula somewhere, waiting to ignite. The story might repeat, not perfectly, but beautifully. You realize suddenly that you don't fear this ending. You've seen too much to call it an end. It's a lullaby, a cosmic pause between verses. And even now, as the darkness deepens beyond measure, you can almost sense the universe inhaling again, preparing for the next breath, preparing for the next sun.
You hover in a place beyond endings, beyond light, beyond language, beyond even the idea of before or after. The universe is silent now, perfectly still, every atom having wandered so far that the concept of distance has lost its meaning. And yet, here you are, floating in the echo of something that once was alive. This is not the heat death you expected. It's something quieter, more elegant, a kind of cosmic meditation. Time itself has flattened into eternity, and the dark feels less like absence and more like rest. You think about how it all began. The sun, that gentle tyrant, that glowing heart that warmed oceans, painted skies, and sparked every breath you ever took. It wasn't malicious, it simply existed. And like everything that exists, it changed. Historians once argued whether it was arrogance or reverence that led humans to worship it. The truth, you suspect, was love. The kind of love born not from safety, but from dependence. The sun gave everything, and so when it began to take it all back, it wasn't punishment, it was completion. The fire consumed the world, but the light outlived the ashes. That's how stars work. That's how you worked, too. You drift closer to the memory of it, the faint pulse of the sun's diamond heart, now long cooled into perfect silence. You imagine reaching out, touching it. It's smooth, cold, eternal, a tombstone carved from light. And yet, when you touch it, it hums. Not loudly, not like sound, more like vibration, a memory so deep it doesn't need matter to exist. You realize it's not the star that's humming, it's you, the part of you made from its atoms, responding to its rhythm, recognizing home. You've been orbiting it all along. Fringe physicists once joked that consciousness might just be the universe remembering itself. Maybe that's what this is. Memory circling memory, endlessly. You wonder if anyone ever truly dies, or if everything just changes form so slowly we mistake it for ending. The sun didn't vanish, it became quieter. The earth didn't fail, it became part of the chorus. The light didn't go out, it just kept traveling, farther and farther, until distance itself became the story. Even now, those photons are still moving, billions of them, carrying fragments of your planet, your oceans, your laughter, traveling endlessly through space, brushing across other worlds that will never know your name, but might still feel your warmth. Historians still argue whether that counts as immortality. You decide it does, because eternity doesn't need memory, it just needs motion. You drift through that endless calm, tracing the ghosts of everything that was, the stars that lived and died, the worlds that burned, the atoms that danced between them. And as you float, you realize something so simple it almost feels divine. Everything that ever was still is. Not the same, not intact, but present. The energy that powered your sun now hums quietly in the background radiation. The carbon that built your bones might one day ignite inside another star. The story never ended. It just slowed down, softened, stretched into something infinite. You exhale, not because you need to, but because it feels right. The darkness doesn't answer, it doesn't need to. The silence is the answer. And in that silence, something begins to shift. Not loud, not bright, just possible. A flicker somewhere far away. A fluctuation in nothing. A quantum itch. You turn toward it, smiling. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. But you've seen enough to know what comes next. The pause between breaths is over. The inhale begins. Light, faint and trembling, blooms again in the void. A new universe exhales, slow and shy. And somewhere in that first spark, a new star begins to form. You can almost hear it, the faint hiss of birth, the warmth of something finding its rhythm. You close your eyes. You already know what it will be called. A sun. The fire is gone now. The light that once burned your skin and grew your crops has settled into memory. But even here, in the hush that follows eternity, there's peace. You breathe, slowly, the way the universe breathes, soft, rhythmic, infinite. You can almost feel the warmth still clinging to your skin, like sunlight through closed eyelids. The story you've just followed wasn't about destruction. It was about rhythm, the endless heartbeat of existence. Birth, bloom, burn, rest, repeat. Every life, every world, every star, just part of a much longer pulse. So, as the darkness settles and the quiet wraps around you, let it. It's not an ending, it's intermission. The universe is simply pausing before the next note. You imagine yourself lying beneath a sky that no longer exists, the last light of the sun still ghosting across your face. The air is cool, the ground warm. You can hear the faint echo of waves that dried up billions of years ago. And in that half-dream, you smile, because you know now, every ending, no matter how final, is just a beginning in disguise. So, close your eyes, let the warmth fade, let the silence hum. Somewhere, another sunrise is already gathering, quietly, patiently, beautifully. And when it comes, it will feel just like this moment. Still, peaceful, infinite. Good night.